Hi, everybody, and welcome. I am so happy to be able to be here with my dear friend, Robert Holden. And I invited him to do a class on the Enneagram for Reflections Parallel. And now I have a chance to chat with him about this wonderful class that I'm so excited about. I have them all to myself, but I'll share them with you. And I have 1,000 questions. I'm going to try and squeeze it down to the basics that I think you might be interested in. Robert and I were talking about the Enneagram. First of all, Robert has a background that's so delicious, and it's going to come out shortly. He's a brilliant writer. He's a brilliant teacher. He's a psychologist. He's just magnificent. And then there's the Enneagram, which he'll describe in a minute. But what really got me fascinated about this, and then I thought it would be so wonderful to offer it to you, was when Robert described where the Enneagram came from and the way he presented it with his deeply spiritual understanding. So, Robert, can you share that again?
Yeah, for sure.
And welcome. I'm so happy to have you here.
Thank you, Caroline. And well, greetings to everybody from Findhorn, which is one of our favorite places, Caroline. Yeah. And it's actually where we first met.
Yes, it is.
All the way back in 2005, we were on a 7-day conference.
Yep.
And we've done a few of them since then. So it's just really lovely to be collaborating together with you on this. So yes, so the Enneagram, it's a Greek word. We should start there. Ennea essentially means 9, and gramma is something written. It's a model. So this is a model of 9. And essentially, the Enneagram is both ancient and modern. Mm-hmm. The ancient piece goes all the way back to perhaps 2,500 years ago. And the origins are in the esoteric schools of Egypt and Greece. They are to do with the sacred mathematics of Pythagoras, who I know you absolutely love.
Yep.
We have the philosophy of Plato and Aristotle, also of Plotinus, Plotinus, the founder of the Neoplatonism. He actually had a work called the Enneads. And so we really have this sort of ancient background, also together with the Desert Fathers and the Desert Mothers of the 3rd century. And at that time, the Enneagram really was exploring the marriage of our psyche with the cosmos. How is it that we can experience the sacred mathematics of the universe? How is it that we can experience the poetry of the universe as expressed through mathematics, so that we can have an experience of God's natural laws, and an understanding that we actually are the creation of God's natural laws. And when we are aligned with those laws, our life can work beautifully. And of course, when we move out of alignment with these natural laws, that's when we experience that sense of the fall from grace, the separation, and everything else that we're so well acquainted with. Now, this is the ancient Enneagram. Right. We also have a modern Enneagram. And the modern Enneagram was really brought to us in the early 20th century by that enigmatic Sufi Gurdjieff. And it was actually P.D. Uspensky, the Russian philosopher, who was... Right. Well, he was traveling through Europe, India, Egypt, in search of the miraculous, which, of course, was his great classic book. And it was, I think, around about 1915 when he met Gurdjieff. And this was when Gurdjieff actually introduced the Enneagram to Uspensky. And he said something rather astonishing, and I'm actually going to quote this to you right now. So this is what Gurdjieff said. He said, "A man may be quite alone in the desert, and he can trace the Enneagram in the sand, and in it read the eternal laws of the universe. And every time he can learn something new, something he did not know before." So there's the invitation for an extraordinary inquiry.
You know, Robert, there was a time when the Enneagram didn't it just didn't go with anything in my head. And then I fell in love with Pythagoras.
Mm.
But it wasn't just an ordinary merger of what happened was when I got into Pythagoras, it was as if his whole teaching of how numbers are alive beings, and it downloaded into me and then into my bio-spiritual ecology, where I understood that like the way he understood one as holism was in fact one in my chakras, that the consciousness of holism was in my chakras, that the consciousness of two was in my chakras, that all of that was an active agent in everything that I was doing, and that therefore God is law, that this is the nature of God, that there is no off-planet man, that everything is law. And then the Enneagram suddenly became this cosmic tool that made sense to me. It became like precious goods, like a cosmic, I got to understand this.
Yes. Yeah. And Karen, I can really relate to that, because when I was first introduced to the Enneagram, at first glance, it looked like another personality test.
Right.
And frankly, I felt I'd done enough of those to last a lifetime.
Yeah, haven't we both?
Yeah. So a very good friend of mine, Marika Borg, persevered with me. And she said, if you let me introduce you to the Enneagram, you will thank me for the rest of your life. Yeah. But it needs a proper introduction, because we have this extraordinary blend of an ancient and a modern Enneagram. The modern Enneagram is essentially looking at the persona, whereas the ancient Enneagram is very much for the psyche. And we're looking at the relationship between the persona and the psyche. Now, we know that in the West, in the last century or so, in psychology, there's almost no place for the psyche anymore. Right. The psyche has been cancelled. It's been deleted from the curriculum of psychology. Yeah. So, a personality typing system doesn't mean anything without a relationship between the personality and the soul. And essentially, the Enneagram is going to help us with that. And it does that through a process of spiritual mathematics. We're going to be dealing with the zero, represented by the circle. Also,
can you show the circle?
Yeah, let's have a little look at the circle, and essentially put the true Enneagram here is the circle right in the middle there, where with the white lines. Mm-hmm. And if you look closely at that, the zero, we'll look at this in depth, but the first teaching of the Enneagram is to do with the one and the number one. Mm-hmm. And absolutely, Ponticus, for example, had three basic principles. And the first one was that we are all a creation of the one, which is our essential goodness. Mm-hmm. And we have to remember that. You'll also notice that there's a triangle in there, and that triangle points to the law of three. And of course, the law of three is vital for the evolution of humanity. Where there is only polarity, where there's only you and me, we will always run into difficulty. But when two or more are gathered, the law of three comes in, all of a sudden we have a space for transformation. There's some other lines in there which are called the hexad, and I'll explain that a bit more, because those are to do with lines of direction and growth. So we will get absolutely into the mathematics of this. I would say, by the way, Caroline, when I first started to teach this work, one of the first clients that I really worked with was a law firm, and they're the number 3 law firm in the world. Mm-hmm. And it was really intriguing to me, because they wanted me to work with the Enneagram at board level. They flew me all around the world to do Enneagram profiles with all of their top lawyers. And for them, they were super comfortable with the Enneagram because it was based on law, real law. I mean, back to spiritual law, the real laws that are the natural laws of the universe. So the great thing is with the Enneagram is we've got something that is, I think, incredibly robust and fascinating. The purpose of the Enneagram fundamentally is to do with another Greek word, which is anthropos, which is how can we be fully human and fully divine? How can we be fully in our power? And that is the great work of the Enneagram. What we're looking at essentially is one of the greatest, I think, oldest self-awareness tools on our planet. The self-awareness is on two levels. The first is a greater self-awareness of the operating system of the ego. We need to have an awareness of the operating system of the ego, because without that, the ego runs us. Instead of it being a servant, it becomes the master. And Caroline, I've just pulled out a quote of yours from Anatomy of the Spirit, where you share with us, you say, I am convinced that the deepest desire within each of us is to be liberated from the controlling influences of our own psychic madness or patterns of fear. That's what the Enneagram is for. What we're going to be looking at is the operating system of your ego, of your persona. And we're going to be making sure that you, we're going to take you like from being unconscious to being conscious, if you like. The second type of awareness is the awareness of your soul. And to be more aware of the presence of your soul. And I'm going to quote you now again from Anatomy of the Spirit, where you actually gave us a question. And the question was, how can you live without knowing what your spirit is doing and what your spirit is saying to you? That was the challenge you threw down to us. And it's a good challenge. This really takes us back to Gurdjieff, who basically said that we are asleep. We haven't woken up yet.
Yeah.
We need to wake up. Now, in entering the castle, you said the reason you have descended into physical life is to unleash the power of your soul upon earth. And I have to say that is what the Enneagram is for. It's to help you have a healthy relationship to your ego, and for you to identify once again with your soul and with your true nature. That's the great work. And as we do this, we experience what is often called a metanoia, a transformation. And this transformation comes when we meet our soul. And I'm going to quote you one more time, if I may. And this is again from Anatomy of the Spirit, where you say, meeting the self, capital S, activates the transformation of human consciousness. And when I read that, I thought, yeah, that's what the Enneagram is really for.
You know why I think it's obviously it's been a tool for centuries and centuries and centuries. Why do I think it's so essential now? I've said it before. My students have heard me say this, but I think I may spend the rest of my life saying some version of this, which is I do really believe that we are living at the most critical era of human transformation. I really do believe that. And by that, I mean, I think that the myths of the cosmos that we have relied upon, and human beings don't realize how much they rely upon religious myths and the myths of God, are all getting dismantled. And we have yet to construct a new series of beliefs, which is why human beings are scampering and you're going, maybe fascism is going to work. Maybe this will work. Maybe that'll work. I mean, they're just scampering, trying to find something to believe in, someone to believe in. But in fact, what holds true are these tools of mathematics, these tools that have been consistent with the nature of nature. With the nature of God is mathematical. the nature of the universe. What is, to me, what is being born is a bio-spiritual ecological theology that embraces an understanding that the laws of the universe are the nature of God.
Yeah.
That is the nature of God. So this tool reflects that which is consistent. It's not religious. It is a tool that accesses the nature of the divine within that purely mathematical way, because God is two things to me: totally impersonal. Mathematics is impersonal. Pythagoras, impersonal, but deeply intimate. And that's where the power of prayer comes in.
Beautiful, Caroline. I love listening to you. And it's just, I think for me, what the Enneagram does is it offers us, as I say, this relationship, which is offering the cosmos to us, but also in a very deeply intimate way. And it's asking us to participate in the eternal and with the eternal in this very, very personal way. So essentially what we will do together over our 10 classes is we will use the Enneagram in 3 different ways. The first way is we will use it to explore our personality type. And there are 9 types on the Enneagram, and we will explore the 9 types. We'll take a class on each of the types. And in doing this, I want to emphasize that we are not typing the psyche. You can't type the psyche. The psyche is full of mystery. We're typing the operating system of your personality. And what we're going to do by doing that is just to make sure we remove, we can undo the blocks to a fuller expression of your psyche as such. So we'll look at the 9 types. We'll then also look at the Enneagram in another way. And if we look at the model again, what we'll do is we'll take a look at the Enneagram as a mandala for 9 meditations. And we will take a journey through, it's like a map of consciousness where we're going to meditate on spiritual growth, personal and collective, for these 10 classes. In the first class, we'll do an overview and we'll set our theme, and our theme will be spiritual growth. What does spiritual growth mean for me in my life at this time, precisely at this time, Caroline, as you say, for a time when not only are we experiencing our own metanoia, our own profound shift, but actually the whole world is experiencing metanoia. Yeah, absolutely. This has to be a time, I say to all of my students, we're not going to get through this. We'll have to grow through this. If you're only going to try to get through this, I'm afraid you won't survive. But if you want to grow through this, then you will survive and will come out the other side of this, with this greater awareness for sure. But we will walk around the Enneagram together. We will explore the 9 types so as to give you every chance to either identify your type or to have a deeper appreciation of your type. But we will then pause and we will also work on 9 meditations to do with spiritual growth. And one of the reasons why I was so excited to do this program with you, Caroline, is for this reason, really, which is that when somebody offers a truly universal teaching, as you do, it resonates on every single one of the 9 points of the Enneagram. So it becomes a completely holistic teaching. And so I'm able, for instance, to read your works, Caroline, and I've listened to many, many of your talks. We've presented on the same stage many, many times with Hay House and other conferences. And I've been able just to see how naturally you are able to put your work into every single one of the points of the Enneagram. And this, of course, this happens naturally when you offer a genuinely holistic teaching, because it becomes a multi-dimensional teaching and it resonates on each of these points. So I am just super excited to be able to present classes where in each class, you're going to then offer us a spiritual practice, some sort of a meditation or a practice, which is going to resonate for that point on the Enneagram.
Yes.
And this is super important, by the way. A lot of the work that I do with the Enneagram is supporting people in teaching positions to make sure that they are able to address their topic in this more multidimensional way, where they're not just talking about God from their point of view, they're almost talking about God from every point of view. I'll explain more about that as we go. But for me, that's for me is the great power of your teaching, has been that you've always allowed the soul to express itself through you. And because of that, all of the 9 Enneagram points are represented in your teaching. And I look forward to explaining how that works and how that is.
Well, I look forward to, I have to say in closing our time together, and I wish we could just, I am so looking forward to teaching. I would do this just for the two of us, to be honest with you. Honestly, I am looking forward to taking your class, to actually studying with you and taking that class. But it will be a privilege for me to then offer a spiritual commentary and prayer and guidance at the end of each class. Just a privilege. I've never done that with anybody. And I have to say, I'm looking forward to it, but I'm also looking forward to your class as a student, because I have wanted to study this and I cannot imagine anybody else that I would take this class with. So, Robert, thank you. Thank you 1,000 times for agreeing to teach with Reflections Parallel, for being my dear friend.
Caroline, thank you. Thank you for the opportunity. And we will, through this program, I really feel we'll find a way to bless the world 9 times over with 9 fundamental meditations on bringing more grace to the world at this time, so that we can support ourselves and each other in genuinely taking that next step in our personal growth and in the global transformation of the world at this time.
Thank you, dear friend. I'll see you next week.
Looking forward to it.
Okay. Bye.